Does hip hop have an age problem? Is there a really massive divide between the young heads, the old heads, and the new old heads? I'm Sean Lonegevity with Bringing Down the Band and the New Old Heads podcast, and this is my Unpacked series where I typically go deeper on New Old Heads podcast episodes, which is the podcast I'm a part of, and sometimes on some other stuff. And today I'm actually going to talk about and watch and react to this new video, or new-ish video from FD Signifier called "Hip Hop Has an Age Problem, Kinda." Now I haven't watched this yet. This is a precursor. Been meaning to watch this. It's been on my docket. But yeah, let's watch this, and I'll pause and discuss as it hits. So yeah.
A few weeks ago, the Clips released their fifth studio album, Let God Sort 'Em Out, and their first album in nearly 15 years to critical and commercial acclaim. And after a week or two of discourse, I made a video about how I had mixed feelings about the fact that arguably the most critically acclaimed, attention-grabbing rap album of the year was made by two men older than me. That video never made it to YouTube. And it didn't make it for mostly good reasons. A lot of what I had to say in this video, I'm going to low-key repeat in this one. But right after that video was finished, I saw a video from my problematic nephew, Dom, where he continued his smoke demon phase toward the generation before him, agreeing with my overall opinion, but also adding some things to the story that I knew I wanted to touch on. And I didn't know if I touched on perfectly. Before I could add anything to the video, I ended up taking a trip to LA for some business and ended up connecting with who I would say is the godfather of modern hip-hop journalism and content creation, the Company Man. And my conversation with him really helped me see that my initial take was inadequate. So the following is a result of my thoughts influenced by two, what I would say, powerful voices in hip hop criticism from relatively opposing sides from the generational and artistic divide. And using those angles, I want to discuss why I think we're at a pivotal crossroads for hip hop and music culture in general. So
I will say, being able to talk to Justin a few times, he's been on our show twice. I really do like Justin's approach, the Company Man's approach, and his opinions on things. The one thing that you know that you're always going to get from Justin is he's going to tell you exactly how he feels, but it's coming from a place that's being well thought out, and it's not just vibes. But I definitely appreciate his perspective. So I'm very interested in seeing where this goes further here.
Let's talk about Let God Sort 'Em Out and why that album is so interesting, but also alarming. Hip hop has always been an art form that reflected the energy and attitudes of America's and eventually the world's young people. I remember vividly as a teenager joking with my friends about how weird it was going to be when someone like Snoop Dogg got old and was still trying to rap. And mind you, old rappers are definitely doing weird shit right now, but it's not necessarily the music that's weird. In fact, the last half decade has proven that old rappers can actually still provide the genre with amazing work. Nas went on a generational run coming out of COVID that rivals anything he's ever done as an artist. 𝗕𝗥𝗓𝗡𝗚 oddly gave the world his first album in his early 40s after over a decade of waiting. Artists like A$AP Rocky, Billy Woods, and even Killer Mike have all given the world numerous excellent projects in the last few years, while all in their mid to late 40s. And of course, probably the first to show that this was possible was Jay-Z back in 2017 at 444 when he was 48 years old. Now, one difference is the fact that unlike a lot of other old rappers, the Clips are still rapping about selling drugs, being rich, and killing people. And I love it. We all loved it. It's great. And if you think about it, it's no more relatable to a person like me when I was younger than it is when I'm older. So
Jay Moore says something on the show. He's just like, as long as it's done well, as long as you're going to do it and you're going to do it at a high quality.
It's just good, fun entertainment. But also in between those drug bars, we get amazing moments about aging with hip hop and in the spotlight, gaining perspective through experience, losing parents. All this to say, as much as I love him, Andre 3000, you are wrong. There is a lot of room for older people in hip hop. Teray, another hip hop journalism elder, said as much a while back. However, I still have concerns when I see the rollout and reception for Let God Sort 'Em Out, not in terms of its success, but in terms of galvanizing the culture, drawing attention, and driving trends and conversations, being a moment in hip hop in a way that I don't know if it's happened enough in the last decade or so. Because while I think there's plenty of room for older rappers in hip hop, any genre of art that is dominated by people in their 40s going into their 50s, especially a genre that used to be driven by younger people. The aforementioned Nas, for example, was 19 when he made Illmatic, and the aforementioned Andre 3000 along with Big Boy, they were both 19 when Outkast released Southern Playalistic Cadillac Funky Music. If the only people really engaged with hip hop culture as a music culture and not a drama culture, and we'll get to that later, if those people are all pushing 40 and older, that means hip hop is dying, or at least that it's not in a healthy place. As much as I love Kendrick
Is it? Is that what that means? I mean, hip hop has always been a youth driven thing, music in general. To me, it almost kind of feels like when you mentioned Nas at 19, Andre and Big Boy, and how young they were when they were writing and creating the material that they were creating. We all know that artists exist at 18 and 19 years old that were similar in style and skill as a Nas and an Andre and a Big Boy were back then. I think the difference a little bit is that those artists typically aren't pushed to the forefront as much, especially in popular culture and media. And music has kind of become this thing where, because anybody has access to be able to do it, even though the really great stuff does exist, oftentimes it's kind of existing in the same place as a lot of really horrible shit as well, aesthetically, but also just from a talent perspective. But it's propped up, right? And I feel like the older artists tend to create music that was similar to what the younger artists were creating when they were young back in the day. And so it's like they are trying to hold on to a particular type of thing. And again, I say all this saying that, yes, not everything was super duper lyrical miracle, you know, and stuff like that. But the balance was a little bit different and strayed when we talked about what was kind of pushed to the forefront. But I feel like it's almost like a type of gatekeeping that's kind of attempting to be had in a way, as a way to kind of preserve what's left. I don't know. It's kind of an interesting dichotomy of youngness, and because again, previously, hip hop was in its infancy back then. So sure, there were artists that were rapping in the early 80s, but there wasn't a whole generation of reference points to look at. So I don't know if I 100%, that's a really cool conversational piece though.
Lamar's current reign of dominance, I don't know if there's ever been a time where the biggest star in hip hop has been in their late 30s. Drake's most dominant run in the 2010s, he was in his mid 20s.
Yeah, but again, it's because hip hop is younger, right?
Kanye and Wayne before him were in their mid and late 20s. Jay-Z was maybe the first to do this in his 30s and the late 90s during his most dominant run, but he had been around since his mid 20s. And before that, Biggie, Tupac, Lauryn Hill.
Yeah, okay, I see where he's going with this. Okay.
Missy Elliott, Run DMC, LL Cool J, and so on. These were all very young men and women becoming superstars and affecting significant change and impact on hip hop culture, making iconic work at that time. It's not that it's not happening now, is that the way it's happening is not where it needs to be. Now, I want to be clear that I'm using the word iconic for a reason, because I'm about to give maybe my hottest take in a while to point out a paradox happening in hip hop. I'm not saying that there are no young rappers making good music right now in 2025 or in the past decade or so. In fact, I think that hip hop music as a whole is the best it's ever been, and this includes younger rappers. Now, I know this is something that people my age would disagree with, but that's because they're probably less locked in than I am, and y'all know I'm not nearly as locked in as I used to be once upon a time. And part of that is because there's honestly too much good hip hop coming out these days. There's a new rap girl with a ratchet banger every 3 weeks. There's a new Griselda project every 2 months. There's an entire genre of female MCs making more purist boom bap adjacent music like Chica and Lil Sims and No Name. There's entire catalogs of good music from younger artists like Denzel Curry or Vince Staples that I don't get to spend enough time with. Because the reason is one of y'all are bringing to my attention someone like Mike, who I haven't listened to yet because I don't know when I'm going to do that, because I just heard the new McKinley Dixon project, and that is to me my favorite thing that's came out all year. And then I find out that dude has 5 other albums that I've never heard, and this is all while �let_God_Him_Out is still in heavy rotation.
Yeah, there's just so much to consume in this space. I feel like people are feeling the burnout of this is in a similar type of way that I felt music burnout in like 2010 and 11 and 12 when I was blogging. Like when I was a music blogger and an artist at the same time. But when I know I sound like a broken record if you see my other videos, but back when I used to literally get 100 emails a day reviewing people's music, the amount of music that I would go through because I didn't want to miss anything, right? I wanted to make sure everybody had a fair shake. It became to a point to where like I was just overwhelmed all the time. And it's part of the reason why the way that I playlist now is just adding stuff to a playlist. It's not blogging. It's not really talking about it as much. You know, I'm trying to get back into creating community posts about stuff, like scheduled posts, maybe like once a day or 2 a day or something like that. But like, I just add stuff to my Turn Off Your Radio playlist, you know, that I've been doing since 2013, 14. You can kind of see it. That poster there with the guy flipping them off. That was a show that we did way back in the day. But anyway, shouts to TR, my homie TR. He's the one who designed that guy, and also to bring down the band logo. But anyways, I say all that to say is that like people are feeling burnout now in a similar way that I've felt burnout from music in a very long time. And it's just because it's so much in our face. It's just like, it's so hard to keep up when you also have a life. You've seen the meme, like, what why am I interested in this? I'm sorry, I have a job. Like, it's that type of thing. It's like, I don't have the time to just listen to 9 different new albums every day or 9 different new singles. And I try my best. And I feel like I'm on top of stuff more than most people, at least what's happening. But consuming media and consuming music are 2 different things. And it's very challenging right now.
If you're my age and you're paying attention and you're honest, you have to admit there simply wasn't this much high quality stuff coming out in the 90s, because the way we consumed hip hop, the people that controlled how hip hop was released would not have allowed it. But that's also part of the issue. Hip hop music is in a second renaissance right now. The hip hop culture is kind of trash. And there's a lot of reasons for this. Many of them have to do with the mediums through which we consume music. Streaming has changed the nature of engaging with the music, and has also exacerbated how exploitative being a rapper is, as rappers make even less money off their music today than they did 30 years ago. They were getting at least pennies off each record, and now it's a percentage of a penny off each stream. And this has led to a big difference in how rappers might be motivated to make music. And you know, I'm gonna be lazy and just
It used to be when people said, yeah, like everybody's a rapper, is because everybody was trying to be creative. Now it's people are trying to be rappers just because they're looking for a bag. And it's a different thing.
like add a section from that vaulted video here, because it's basically the same shit. But even going back to those stars, the Doechis, the Glorillaz, the Megs, etc., are any of them willing to put in the effort to sit and really build a project akin to 𝗕𝗏𝗡𝗚𝗚, or Let God Sort Them Out, or maybe whatever Jid and Joey Badass are
I think Doechii will.
doing? To be fair, does the even culture demand that from them, or is this just an outdated old head concept? Is it old head of me? I'm asking this genuinely, to want more artists to sit down for a couple of years and really work on building a project, because I understand that that's not the optimal way to be a musician in 2025.
I will push back. I think that FD, I think there's hope. And I think there's hope because this is what I say, right? Again, for those that don't know, I am a music producer, have been since 2001, but I also teach this at a school called Decademics DJ and Music Production School. I teach Ableton courses, right? And I'm there 3 days a week. And I created that program, and I have a lot of students that I've mentored in the last 7-8 years and stuff. But one thing that when we get to the final portion of our course is I talk about this, right? I talk about how this landscape works, because I understand content very well, right? And so what I say is this: you don't have to sacrifice the album, the project, the integrity of the creative process. If you love albums, make an album. The only thing that needs to change is how you market it. Make a full album. Historically, we looked at this in the sense of the classic rollout. And I talked about this a little bit in my Clips video, where I talked about their rollout and how nobody should emulate what the Clips did. But in general, everything works from a For You page algorithm now, right? So if you drop something to kind of build up to something, nobody's going to see it, right? And nobody's going to be interested. Everybody wants everything right now. Here's what I suggest all my students to do. Finish your project. Create all of the content for every single one of your projects, and then release singles after everything's out. That's how you have to do it. That is the one way to do it. You can still have an album. That way, when you drop something, it just references a project. Everything that you're doing is referencing this full project. Every single song could be a single. Every single song could have a music video. You need to treat it like Tyler talked about treating albums, like you care about them. Spend a year releasing content related to 16 songs, or let's say 12 songs, is once a month. And that 1 month, you go really hard on that first track. You create all this different types of content for it. You talk about it. You're in the content space doing content things. Maybe you're talking in a camera like this, right? But you're doing those things for that record. And then you move on to the next one. And then you move on to the next one. And in the meantime, when you get free time, sure, you can work on music and stuff. But the goal is to finish your project and then market it as such afterwards. You cannot abandon the album. You cannot abandon the creative process, because the way that things work right now is singles. It's all singles driven. But if you have an album and then you just treat those songs on your album like singles, it doesn't matter if they're a traditional single anymore. It doesn't matter, because you can target it in the algorithm in a particular type of way. You can have B-sides can be major hits now. You just have to target it the right way. So to me, that's the approach. That's the little bit of light that I would shine on this and say, yes, you can still do it that way. But anyways.
Like, I don't know if any rapper has had a bigger 18 to 24 month period than 𝗕𝗪𝗪. I feel like ever since she popped up a couple of years ago, she's basically had a top 10, top 20 hit every 2 to 3 months. And somehow she came out with not one, but 2 albums in 2024, or maybe they're mixtapes. I honestly don't know. And that's kind of my thing. It doesn't feel like it mattered that she came out with 2 albums in 1 year, and that the albums themselves didn't really make, like, as singular projects, they didn't make huge splashes, because she's still releasing big hits every couple of months.
Yeah. So again, it's kind of changing the mind frame a little bit. Like, you don't have, the album is less important to some people, but some people still want that cohesive work. So you're given what 80% of the people just want. Like, I'm scrolling through my time. Oh, this is a cool song. Let me go check this out. That's what like 80% of people want. But then there's like the niche group. There's like us. There's the people that want the album. They want the full project. They want to hear it in its full context. All of those things. It's the music heads, right? They want to know what that looks like. So for those 20% of people, you still create the things so that they can consume it how they want to. You can do both at the same time.
What would incentivize her to go away from that strategy and like let her wave calm down for a second and legitimately stay in the studio for a big album, hype it for months, make one big splash all at once, when she can basically just keep ruling TikTok and Instagram and whatever else with these great songs? And this is where my conversations with Company Man and Dom come in. What I began to ask is, where are the huge cultural shifting moments in the form of music coming from younger parts of hip hop? While there's still good music happening in hip hop, the stars don't seem to shine as bright. I looked at a list of the 20 hottest rappers in hip hop from 2022, and a bunch of the people on that list had already low-key fallen off, like Jack Harlow and Sexy Red. If you were people I didn't know anything about, like V's and Cash Cobain and Ken Carson, you might say, well, that's because I'm not locked in. And to an extent, maybe.
I only know of Ken Carson because of one of my students. Dead serious. And I've still never heard I haven't heard their music.
But if they were really huge stars, it would be,
who the hell is V's?
Impossible for me not to know who they are. There's a few bona fide huge stars, but they were also mostly women, like Meg, 𝗕𝗪𝗪, Lotto, Dope.
I also think we have to try to get away from this positioning, like a need for people to be stars. Because I truly, I don't know what it is. There's something about this stardom, just in the climate in general. I feel like we're just moving away into different sections and of niche groups of artists and super fans and stuff in that area. I don't know if this stuff really matters as much. Maybe I'm wrong.
Doechii, and keep a pin in that because that's important. So aside from maybe Playboi Carti and Lil Uzi Vert, I don't think anyone on that list has truly done anything to deeply impact hip hop culture on a large scale. There's good music, there's big hits, but there's no big galvanizing culture.
But is he talking about hip hop culture or pop culture? Because there's an interesting juxtaposition there.
Shifting moments. And as I showed with 𝗕𝗪𝗪 in that previous segment, I don't think there's
an interesting intersectionality between hip hop being the most popular, culture right now, if that continues, and pop music.
Even a real reason or like force to make that a thing. As big of a year that 𝗕𝗪𝗪 had, I don't think her presence right now compares to what Nicki Minaj did with Pink Friday 15 years ago. And I was old then. I wasn't locked in then, but I could tell from looking at the youth and from looking at the culture that something was happening when she came out.
Well, she had a very niche fan base as well.
And it's not the same. People now are just satisfied with small mini waves in different pockets of fandom. And that's not the worst thing, because that also does mean we get better, more niche content. But it does mean that hip hop is lacking star power, or at least young star power, which is concerning because that's what drives the medium and the culture forward.
Again, does it actually drive the culture forward though? Does star power drive the culture forward? That's the thing. That's the question I would pose.
Into the future beyond when I'll have any influence. There's a lot of obvious aspects of.
Because obviously then the conversation comes up about how Biggie's album and Nas's album and capitalism in the 90s and big business getting into hip hop kind of shifted how things were. Like, there's a whole nother conversation in that as well.
Why this is happening, late capitalism and enshittification of music streaming and how we consume music. But the Company Man added something else that I definitely want to touch on to oversimplify our conversation. Justin, I invite you to add your commentary to this when you can. He pointed out that essentially Gen Z doesn't have the best critics who are also popular and influential in the culture in the same way that me and him and others above us and older than us were while we were consuming hip hop. The reality is that the popular figures who promote and discuss music that is Gen Z oriented are, for lack of a better word, pretty shallow. So before you take offense to that, young people, let me explain.
But it's true. I mean, I just literally 3 hours released a video about how Kai Cenat is not a hip hop critic. You know, Adin Ross is not a hip hop critic. They may cover some hip hop, but they're massive influencers that sometimes it cross pollinates, but they don't have like that one. Like I don't know very. I mean, there are a few TikTok people that are a little bit younger that kind of in that space. I've seen a handful of people.
Back in my day, hip hop journalism was a real thing. That's where Justin came from. 𝗕𝗏, Sway, Funkmaster Flex, Joe Claire, Fab Five Freddy, Heather B, and a bunch of other names that a lot of you are like, who the fuck is this nigga talking about? But if you're around my age, that was a little nostalgic, hit to the brain. These were the talking heads of my time. And while they weren't as
Shouts to Sway, he's my favorite.
In depth or as analytical as maybe a Justin and many of my peers are today, they were still seriously engaged with criticism and discussion of hip hop. They inspired debate and
it was very like the centering piece of these people was hip hop. And that's the difference between the influencers now is it's just a massive amalgamation of anything that's popular at the time. It's not like there's not like a center focus based on like super big, creator that is hip hop centered. Right. And I don't mean, and I'm talking like outside of the popular sphere of everything. It's all very much just what is popular.
Discourse and admiration. And they were tastemakers that grew the culture through funneling the biggest stars to our eyes and brains and making sure that when their music happened, when their music came out, that we all sat with it instead of just consuming it as content. And to be blunt, this is not something that a 𝗕𝗏𝗪𝗡 or Adin Ross or XQC or academics is doing right now. In our conversation, Company Man brought up this conflict between XQC and Anthony Fantano. And, Anthony Fantano didn't like Jack Boys 2. And he did like 𝗕𝗓𝗪𝗡, right? And his reasoning was that Jack Boys 2 felt a little shallow and uninspired. And the Company Man pointed out that whether or not you like Jack Boys 2, if you have an analytical stance on hip hop and that music specifically, you could illustrate multiple positive angles that could be made about Jack Boys 2 that would be a solid argument against what Fantano presented. So in a dream world where Anthony Fantano and the Company Man have a conversation about those albums, anyone who witnessed that would be richer from the experience of seeing two informed and experienced hip hop critics sharing an intellectual conversation where they may have disagreed. However, XQC is no Justin Hunt. SQC basically went full idiocracy on us and said, unga bunga, words are hard, let's vibe. It was really embarrassing. And it's incredibly embarrassing that somehow this guy is a prominent voice for Gen Z on anything, let alone hip hop. Say what you want about Anthony Fantano, but one thing you have to admit is that he's a thoughtful critic with an informed perspective.
Yeah, and it's the thing is it's bigger than hip hop music too. Like these are people that have influence over everything. When you see in this live streaming space somebody like Asmongold, who is just kind of a shit post streamer who's known for like wallowing in his own filth, when he becomes one of the largest right wing streamers that he's grifting towards because he's not qualified. It's just what it is. Cute Beanie Siegel, man. Like he's just not qualified. And I think that's what happens. I think that's the interesting place that we're in right now. There's just not a lot of people that are generally just qualified to hold that role. And I think that's, I don't know. It's not that there aren't people qualified. I feel like there needs to be an amplification of those artists or those people that are doing that are younger. Because I know you exist. I know you're out there. You know what I mean?
And if you don't agree with it. And Fantano has millions of subscribers across multiple platforms. I have 1 million subs across multiple platforms. Justin Hunt is pushing 400K. Curtis King does over 300K. And the hip hop podcast world is dominated by people like Joe Buttons and others who are born from the same cloth as he is. And then there's the traditional hip hop media entities like Ebro and Sway. All of those things are still around. But all of us combined pale in comparison to giants like 𝗕𝗏𝗪𝗡, especially when it comes to getting the attention of Gen Z. And as hard as this is to believe for those of you around my age watching, 𝗕𝗏𝗪𝗡 is the biggest and most influential figure in hip hop right now, and definitely for the youth. And no, minimal shade to 𝗕𝗏𝗪𝗡. He's not who you should go for any type of substantive hip hop journalism. He's not a tastemaker. He's not.
It's so crazy. I literally just dropped a video about this.
Not providing criticism or analysis. It's mostly just antics and jokes at best. The closest thing to substantive commentary for Gen Z is probably Sean C, who's barely Gen Z because he's 29 now. And Sean C has a large following, but all the other younger oriented content media entities that I can think of that are also youth oriented are more like 𝗕𝗏𝗪𝗡. That whole streaming world, while I get that it's, entertainment and I don't get streaming. I don't get that world of streaming. I don't think it's directly a problem, but I know it's not serving hip hop criticism in any meaningful way. It's just a lot of young dudes having fun, which I get.
Which is fine. That's fine. But again, I think that's a great point.
The people that are Gen Z that are doing serious commentary are much, much smaller, and they're not getting nearly the same level of attention.
Man, it's literally what I said in my video. I said it's a problem and I don't know the solution. So hopefully the solution comes in this video, right?
I mentioned Dom, who along with Four and with the Potty Mouth podcast, and they're just starting to get traction the last couple of years. Then there's people like Top 5 Troy, who I think is pretty small. Dupli is another hip hop creator that's made some good stuff and gotten a lot of views.
Yeah, I just reacted to a Dupli video that was really good.
But beyond him,
and thank you for saying his name because I didn't know how to pronounce it.
I can't think of too many hip hop channels that are doing actual journalism as opposed to just making hip hop drama commentary. And I get why those channels do numbers, because it seems like more hip hop fans are interested in drama than music. And I get why, because this generation's first images of hip hop commentary in the last decade were guys like DJ Vlad and Adam 22. That said, I can't just pin it explicitly on a failure within Gen Z, because that's our responsibility. Dom points out something I've complained about for years, which is that the old guard of hip hop tastemakers are struggling with aging out of relevancy. They're struggling with change, and for the longest, too many of us have been openly hostile and dismissive of what the modern era of hip hop is.
I 100% agree. This is also why the podcast that we started, you can see on my hat, was called New Old Heads. And the goal with the New Old Heads was not to be like the new version of the old heads. It's not the definition, and don't let anybody tell you that. The thing around it was like, we came from the blog era. And one thing that myself and J Diff, who's on the show, is like, we were bloggers and we were always looking for what's new, dope, and fresh. Doesn't matter how old you are. Doesn't matter what it is. Our mantra is, respecting the old and appreciating the new when it's good. And that's pretty much what it is. It doesn't matter what it is. It just has to be dope. So many, but it came out of, like, that was the intentionality behind it. It was like, no, we don't want to be old heads. Like, we don't want to be the old heads in the room. We want to make sure that we are leaving space for the future. You know what I mean? What do you
about? And the consequences of this has been a severe lack of carrying on tradition. And by tradition, I don't necessarily mean a specific style of rap, but I mean the essence of what hip hop culture was supposed to be. Recognize that hip hop has always been compromised. Like, from day one, go back to my Kid and Play video, as soon as the money came to rap music stopped being a radical art form.
Okay, that was in reference to kind of what I was saying earlier a little bit about the 90s. Anyways.
But there were at least always counter forces within the culture resisting commodification, resisting selling out, and staking a claim to that essence the entire time. And that's mostly gone now.
It's not that it's gone. It's just that it lives in the fringes, I don't know.
The biggest, most influential faces in hip hop culture are doing commercials for Target in the middle of Target being boycotted by black people. So please believe you had issues with Snoop Dogg and Nelly performing for Trump like early this year. I can't wait to see what Kai Cenat and his homies are doing 20 years from now for, President Baby Hitler that we'll have by then, because that's a whole other conversation. I see people like Aiden Ross and SQC and worst of all, academics garnering massive audiences and getting cosigns.
I think that's the one thing about academics that's a little frustrating, is that, like, he's them, but he's like trying to operate from a perspective of like hip hop in a way.
Even by legitimate hip hop tastemakers. And you could never have been a serious figure in hip hop doing the things they do. And back in my day, you could never have been a serious figure in hip hop doing some of the things they do. In the 90s and 2000s, coming out and saying that you were a fan of Bush 1 or 2 or Ronald Reagan would have had you completely excised from the culture. But now we have our OGs and new age tastemakers for hip hop overtly supporting Donald Trump. How have many of these so-called tastemakers covered these black women stars? I think you already know the answer. There's a world where Meg and Doechii and others feel bigger than they do even right now if there was a hip hop media landscape more amenable for engaging with female stars. And don't get me wrong, hip hop has never been great with women from jump, but compare the way that hip hop culture received Lil' Kim and Lauryn Hill and Foxy Brown and Nicki Minaj a couple of decades ago versus how people like academics and Aiden Ross treat Doechii and Meg Thee Stallion. And here's the thing, regardless of how people my age feel about the state of hip hop culture right now, and if you feel like the youth and Gen Z and soon to be Gen Alpha is fucking up the culture, that's still our fault. And that's because for the longest time, a lot of us have been openly hostile to anything young people have been doing with hip hop. We have been incredibly uninviting to large chunks of their generation. When Kanye dropped 808s and Heartbreak, we shitted on it heavy, said it wasn't hip hop, said we were mad at Kanye for it. But that album is clearly today one of the most influential records hip hop has seen in the last 2 decades. When Lil Yachty said he didn't know much about Biggie because he was literally born a couple of months after Biggie died, we crucified him him for years for that and wrote him off as if it wasn't an elder's responsibility to sit him down and play Biggie for him, because that's what adults are supposed to do with the youth. So when you look at the way we've engaged and managed those types of conflicts, a schism, a divide between the young and the old was inevitable. We are responsible for carrying on tradition, and we didn't do that. And like thinking about that, I have to show love to Kendrick Lamar, because even though while there's criticism for him connecting with an artist like Playboi Carti, I said then, and I better recognize now, that his goal was just to introduce a generation of fans to a style of hip hop that they haven't been involved with or invited to. Those kids were not here
Fair.
to listen to Good Kid, Mad City 13 years ago. Yes.
Wow, 13 years ago? If you're young and you're watching this, time flies once you reach a certain age. That's crazy. 13 years ago?
Good Kid, Mad City came out 13 years ago. There's other factors we can't dismiss, right? Like, this generation has been the subject of one of the most aggressive anti-intellectualism campaigns that humanity has ever seen. Critical thinking and media literacy was basically taken out of schools deliberately by George W. Bush and Barack Obama. I'm gonna stay on that man's head until y'all understand the problem. I'm sorry if that makes you upset. I was a teacher during that time frame, and all of us knew something was wrong. We realized that absolutely nothing had changed in the way that we were supposed to be teaching when he became president. But even with that, it's still a problem that the intellectual wing of hip hop media for people under 30 seems severely underdeveloped. And I don't know if it's a chicken or the egg situation. Is it that there's not enough real critics, or is it that there's not an audience for it? That's hard to say, but I do know that it's for every.
I feel like I feel like the audience could still exist even if it's a little bit older, though. I don't know. That's a good question. Where are y'all at?
Everyone that loves hip hop, young and old, who put in the work, needed to fix it. Because when I'm 50, while it might be interesting to hear Social Security retirement bars from Nas or Jay-Z, I imagine it will make me sleep better at night knowing that some new little young nigga is taking over the game in a way that I had never seen before in my lifetime. That's what a healthy hip hop culture looks like. It's not the Clips. As much as I love that album being the face of the game right now, it should be some new nigga that we don't know nothing about doing something we never even imagined. Except Playboi Carti. I'm sorry. Just give me that one. Just give me that one. Again, pulling from my combo with Company Man. Our generation is the first to age with hip hop. So us in our 40s and 50s, we're doing this for the first time, and we clearly don't have a blueprint. But we do have an example of how it can go wrong. Because when you look at rock music, that's not where I want hip hop to be. Those of you younger than me may not realize it, but there was a time back in my day that rock music was a significantly more relevant genre of music and music culture and pop culture and mainstream.
Late 80s and the 90s, bro. That's when I grew up.
Anything. It's like Blink-182 and System of a Down and Metallica or Aerosmith and all these other folks were just as likely to be on your TV screens and just as likely to have the equivalent of trending sounds or whatever back then. And right now, almost all of that is very niche and barely gets a blip compared to hip hop and pop and, I don't know, Afrobeat or whatever else. And there's a ton of reasons why rock is invisible from wide commercial appeal, but it couldn't have helped that the old guards of rock and metal and punk acted just how some of us are acting right now, dismissive, territorial, and arrogant toward those who are supposed to inherit the culture. So unless you want this thing of ours to die with us the way it died with rock, we need to be putting in work to nurture and develop the things we love amongst the younger generation. And don't tell me they don't want to listen. That's part of the process. Neither did we, and we didn't because the people above us did not respect us. Y'all remember that even in the 90s, there were black radio stations that didn't play hip hop? Y'all remember people like Larry Blackmon, the lead singer from Cameo? This guy had the nerve to say that rappers look silly. So remember how that felt. Consider what you wanted from your elders once upon a time and give that to the youth, if not for their sake, then for the sake of hip hop. Because we all talk about a shift, right? And I'm still 50-50 on whether or not this shift is really like a thing. Because I can't believe it's a real positive change for hip hop if it's only being appreciated and engaged with by people who won't be here in a decade to carry that tradition on. I can't see it as a real win for the culture until it's joined by artists half our age and celebrated in the same way. Because otherwise, it's not a shift, it's a last hurrah. If you made this far in the video, there's a chance you might want to hear more from that other video that's never coming to YouTube. I do talk a little bit more about clips. I get into a bunch of other stuff. I can't even think about it this.
Shouts to everybody that is doing that, though. I mean, like even here in Indianapolis, there's lots of people that are kind of ushering that in. You know, I've been a part of the Trees Festival here. It's a hip hop festival. You know, I've helped curate a stage since its inception, helped the inception of it like get off the ground, working in the behind the scenes. But like even the curation of the talent, there's always a very intentional approach to get people on the fest that are new and fresh and that are doing great things, and to highlight those people, even if it's from a production standpoint, or even if they're just mostly artists. I curated a beat battle this year. There are a lot of young people, a lot of new people on the beat battle that are going to be, and everybody that's performing, every single person that's performing, I think as a producer is new on our stage. And we try, even the DJs that we get on, we're trying to usher in new faces. But it's like a citywide, it's a cultural thing here in Indianapolis, like with the Trees Festival. Like we're always trying to highlight the people that are still out here doing the things that they need to be doing, but like find a place to like usher in some new faces. And you have to do stuff like that, outside of mentoring or stuff like that. Like this is very much my world. Like I'm deeply ingrained into all of the stuff that FD is talking about right now. Like, and I have been for a very long time. So he's talking into my world, and we do need more people and more people in these spaces. And they exist, but we need to do more in general. People in our age range. FD and I are probably similar in the same type of age. I'm 42. He might be a little older than me. I don't know, but you can always do more.
Point. But like I said, that video is never coming to YouTube, but you can watch it in its original form on my streaming service, Nebula. Let's talk about today's sponsor, Nebula. For those who don't know, Nebula is created by artists like me to be away from his ex-girlfriend from Philosophy 2.
So that's pretty much his video. So yeah, it's a good video. Definitely a good video by FD. Hip hop has an age problem. Kind of agree. But I think the only way is there has to be some, I don't know, man. I don't know what else I can really add as far as commentary, because I feel like it's kind of beat to death in the same sense. But I think, realistically, people that are a little bit older, a little bit more learned, you need to find ways to mentor, give opportunity to, have conversations with. I know all these things are kind of interchangeable, but put yourselves in position to create the world that you want. You have to be active in people's lives. And that's the one thing that I always suggest to people is like, look, if you want somebody to care about you, be an active participant in their story. And that stuff is important, and, they're going to take what they want to take, and they're going to run with whatever they want to and not what they don't, but you're there to at least provide it. And I feel like right now, the main people that are influencing a lot of these younger people are just massive influencers that are younger, that just aren't learned. Their brains haven't formally developed yet. Like I was on here, like, not necessarily defending Neon for any of his actions, but just, he's a kid when he was making a lot of stupid racist remarks, and it's like, all right, cool. He didn't have any mentorship. He didn't have any guidance. He obviously didn't have any guidance. He had only the internet as guidance. There was nobody to show him the right ways to act, that there were consequences for his actions. And now when he's a little bit older, he's seeing some of those consequences and he's trying to change his ways. And now he's also portraying a different persona to people that watch him stream, which I think is, we're watching these kids grow up in real time, online, and other kids are watching other kids grow up in real time as live streamers. And those are the people that they're influenced by, not these older people. You know what I mean? And it's, maybe we need more people in the live streaming space. That are older. I don't think so. Maybe, I don't know, but I think it's just being active in people's lives, man. I think it's being active participants in people's lives, and like as much as possible. And, but good video, good conversation. Again, I'm Sean, Lonegevity with the New Old Heads podcast. And, we drop episodes every single week. We record 2 hours. We have since 2016. Episode every week. The 2 hours uncut is available on our Patreon if you become a $5 member. Patreon.com/newoldheads, or you can just join for free to get notified when we do stuff and when we drop new things. Do that or don't. But until next time, I'm Sean. Peace.